Hey teachers, it is Melissa Willis from Melissa Willis Music. I wanted to jump on and show some more guide note activities that you can do with students. So I think something that's really frustrating when you're working with beginning students online is when they're not connecting the note on the staff with the note on the keyboard. You know, our instinct is just to reach through the screen and want to be able to say it's this note right here and just show them. And our hands are kind of tied, right? We can't do that. Not yet. That technology is not here where we can reach through the camera. But here's the beautiful thing about that is if we learn, if we help them think through the process, if we can learn to talk them through that process of thinking, they'll be able to figure it out on their own. That will give them a whole lot more confidence. They will also be more likely to remember it the next time. If they're the ones that keep figuring it out, that thinking process, I'm not a scientist by any means, but one would assume that something is continually connecting and we're building those neural pathways, right? That's as sciencey as I'll get here. So these games are kind of designed to hopefully help them kind of figure things out on their own. So assuming maybe they know these on the staff, so you've probably seen my guide notes before. These are all from the Music Mind Game materials. I like them because they're color-coded. It easily lets them identify the C's, G's, and F's. And when you're working with students online, having something concrete to differentiate, like a color, is really, really helpful. It doesn't really become a crutch. Once they know it, they'll be fine, but it's really helpful to give them a concrete tool to understand things when you're not right there next to them. So, and if you look up here, sorry, I keep turning this back and forth. Also, I have them all marked up here as well on the piano. So there's two different ways they can see them here and they can see them here. So maybe one way to start, depending on what your student needs, is you could even start up here on the piano and have them play a middle C. Now, I cannot reach all the way across the room and play my middle C, so I'm going to be using my ear as a teacher. You could play middle C first and just make sure you've got that pitch, and then relative pitch will probably get you through with just a few notes. And if not, just, I'm in a rolly chair. I can always roll over and check and roll back if I'm not sure. That's not a big deal. The student's not going to be alarmed at that by any means, right? So just have them play middle C, and then you could say treble G, and just keep going back and forth. And notice I'm using a frog. I forgot to mention, I could just point. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you bring a frog in, you can make it a little bit more playful. You can kind of pique their imagination and their curiosity and say, well, I have this little frog here, and frogs like to do what? What do frogs like to do? And they might say, oh, frogs like to hop. Well, this frog loves to hop between all the guide notes, and maybe they'll want to give him a name. I'm trying to think of a good name. Maybe we'll call this frog, what's a good name that starts with the letter F? I don't know, Freddie, or Fiona the frog. So Freddie or Fiona likes to jump from guide note to guide note. So middle C to treble G, and just kind of let them jump back and forth. When they do this, I like them to use just a finger too and go back and forth so they're actually moving, not just thinking in a hand position. So if moving around is really a struggle for them, you could put them in a hand position at first, and then once they get comfortable and feel a little more safe about where those notes are, then you can have them move back and forth. So you can intersperse sort of intermediate steps in there to help them along. And then I would just practice going from middle C to bass F, because where I find students struggle most is remembering that there is a guide note above middle C and there is a guide note below middle C. A lot of my students want to play the F here, or sometimes they'll want to play the G here. It just depends. They think an F is an F is an F, and of course it's not, right? There's bass F, and there's F above middle C, and so on. So it just reminds them that we're looking for a really specific F, not just any F. So then you can hop back and forth, and you can tell a story. They might make up a story as you go, and then you can start going between all three. So right now, I'm not even attaching it to the staff. I'm just attaching it to the keyboard. And you'll notice I'm just doing 3 notes right now. So depending on where your student is, if you have a beginning student, you're just going to start with those 3 guide notes on the staff. And then you can keep adding. So normally I just start with these 3. Then I will add treble C and bass C. And then, you know what, I don't have these on here. Then I usually add high G and low F. just because of how the music is sequenced, and then I'll add low C and high C. But you can do them in whatever order makes sense for you and the music that you're using. Then you can come down to the staff. So I would, let's see, I'm going to take some of this away because I really just want you to see. So this is what my very beginning student would see. Just that right there. And the same thing, we might go middle C, treble G, middle C, treble G. And if they're not sure, you can come right back up here and this, I had a friend who gave me this. Thank you to my friend, she knows who she is. But you could draw something like this. What I like is it's about the size of like a bulletin board border, and it goes all the way through the length. And I'm not sure where she got them. I should find out. Maybe I can link in the comments. But going back and forth, you can bring it back up to here if you need to. And then you can do the same thing. So go through the same process, hopping back and forth between the notes that you did up here. And in this process, you can talk about their names. You can say the names, middle C, bass F, treble G. I don't actually just let them say G or F or C in the beginning. I make them use the full name. And we sometimes do an analogy like first and last names. Like, you know, my name is Melissa, but I'm Melissa Willis. I'm not, you know, Melissa Miller or Melissa Johnson or whoever. So I want to use the full name. So we talk about that, how that's important to start with. And then, of course, then things get interesting as you add more, but you just want to keep going through the same process. So now you could do this and then go to bass C, bass F, middle C, and just hop around there for a while in different combinations. But I like to stay on one side of middle C for a while, on the other side of middle C for a while, and then start jumping around and comparing. And you don't have to use a frog. I mean, if I have a student who loves cats, I'll get a cat eraser. If I have a student who loves unicorns, I'll get a unicorn eraser, or a crocodile, or a dinosaur, or whatever they're into. Now, one other thing you could do that I wanted to just bring up, I've seen some of these going around in different posts. There's another way you can do, if you want something larger to point, that you can do. And this is kind of fun, right? So you could do that. And maybe you could, I don't know, maybe you could put an eraser or something on the end of that. I don't know if that would work though. Maybe a sticker of a frog. Anyway, so this is just another thing. I'm just all about the animal erasers. Now, I'm going to turn you around to the piano. So just to kind of review, I would do lots of repetition with just 3 guide notes, and then as you add, as you're comfortable, keep going through the same process as you add new material, and that will really grow their confidence. Now, I'm going to come over to the piano. If you can hopefully see that. I just realized I have my piano light on. I'm going to turn that off because there's a little bit of a glare. So here what I have are just all the guide notes on the flashcards, and if you can't see them really clearly, I apologize. But one thing that sometimes is really helpful as well is just to have students, I'm going to take these out because again, these are later, so these would be the first guide notes, right? So your middle C's, excuse me, bass F and treble G, just have them put them in order. I mean, sometimes just doing that, something will kind of click, right? And then, here comes Mr. Frog again. If you want to do this from here, you could just do this. Now this is good because it reminds them that it's the same note, right? Sometimes that's a tricky thing. And then you can go to here and go back and forth and back and forth. And then you can come to here and go this way and so on. And they can say the notes, they can name them. I really encourage you to have them say the notes as they name them. It kind of ties everything together. So if you've got the frog, they would just play them. Whoops. Middle C, treble G, middle C, middle C, middle C, middle C, bass F, middle C, and so on. So you could do that, and then you could bring in the other C's. Now notice the guide notes are also symmetrical. Music Mind Games talks a lot about the symmetry of the guide notes, so you can point that out. If you were to fold those in half, they would touch. Excuse me. So then, same thing, you can go through that same process, and I would do this again with an eraser. They can say middle C, bass F, bass C, and so on. And just keep doing that. hearing all these notes. So, and then I would go to the other side and do the same process. So that is just a really simple way that makes it kind of fun to go through all of those guide notes. So tying it into an eraser, you can take it, you definitely want to connect it with the piano if that's what you're having trouble with, but you can connect it to the piano with the staff slate. You can connect it to the piano with that paper piano I had up above. I know you can't see everything right now. Or you can just connect it to the flashcards. And if they have flashcards at home, they should put theirs in order as well. Now, maybe they want to quiz you. You can turn the tables. They can point to their cards if you can see them, and they can listen to you play. And see if they can hear if you maybe make a mistake and see if they notice. So you can have some fun things with that. You can even just do some ear training and just, especially when you just have 3 notes, they can start to hear the difference between all of those very easily because there's a limited ones to work with, right? So if you only have 3 notes, it's much easier to hear than if you suddenly have all 9 guide notes. So again, if you do those oral skills at the very first stage and get really good at them, then add in 2 more notes and do all of those and keep building, their oral skills are going to grow as well. So I hope that's helpful. A couple other things that I do, these are behind the camera, so I'm going to move you again. This is why I love recording from a tripod. I can just move around. And I know I mentioned these in my other videos, but in case someone hasn't seen that, is seeing this for the first time, I have these colorful tabs. So if I have a student who's really struggling or just needs something super concrete to start with, my students actually all have these. These come in a little care package that I send to my beginning students when they start. So we will put a red tab on middle C, we'll put a blue tab on treble G, and a green tab on bass F. Depending on how long they need these, we can, when we add new guide notes, we might mark them all again. So that's one really great thing to do. And usually then in connection with that, especially for students who are struggling with this, we will just take some erasable colored pencils, a green for bass F, let's see, a red, and somewhere, oh, I already said green, here it is, a blue for treble G. And what we'll do in their music is go through and mark where those are. And it's especially helpful, so, you know, when you're first doing pieces that just have guide notes, they might all have colors, and that's okay. But when you start to add in between the guide notes, so if you're starting to add in, for example, D, E, and F between middle C and treble G, it lets them know where these literal guides or markers are, and it actually helps them, of course, figure these out in between. So it gives them a visual on the keyboard. They sort of have this parameter, and they know they don't have to worry. You know, you've got 88 keys, right? That can feel a little overwhelming. They just know they don't have to worry about that. And if they look at the page and it seems really, you know, there's stuff coming at them, right? They at least are like, okay, here's the C, here's the G. All I have to really try to figure out is what this is in the middle. So again, it just sort of gives some parameters and kind of helps them through that process. And I think it makes it a little less overwhelming. So the best thing I can think of sometimes is when I see a harpist, I look at all those strings and I think, how can they do that? How can they know where they are? And I know that there's a system that makes sense to them because they play the harp. And so when we all look at this piano keyboard, everything seems really clear because we've been doing it for how many years. But I think to a student, they can look at that and just, like, it's overwhelming to see all of that. And it all looks the same. It all kind of looks like a blur. So those colors really pop and give them something really concrete to kind of hang on to. So I hope that's helpful. Please let me know if you have questions or if there's something different that you have a student struggling with in regards to guide notes, and I'll be glad to offer back hopefully a tip. Alrighty, happy teaching. Bye-bye.